Okay, everyone, thank you for coming to the watch-along party. Woo! Nerd, I don't care if you have friends over, but why did you invite me? I feel like our tastes are just a little too different. Oh, come on, boss, it'll be fun. Besides, it's not like you have anything better to do. Okay, got a point. What show are we watching? Oh, silly me. Here you go. It's peak, I promise. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Throughout the entire time that I've been making YouTube videos, discussions on romance anime have managed to always remain a relatively prevalent thing on my channel. One of the very first videos to ever get a significant number of engagement was my Rent-A-Girlfriend review, which to this day I think is still the most visceral rant I've ever gone on aside from my Shield Hero video, and could you really blame me? Because I think it's only gotten more justified as time has gone on. Just a reminder, I made that video nearly 4 years ago. As of the time of this recording, there's currently over 320 chapters of this godforsaken manga, and the two main characters are nowhere close to becoming an actual couple. And you thought your love life was going nowhere. Just be happy Reiji Miyajima isn't writing about your life, lest you end up like some poor sap.
Normally whenever me and Melina would travel, we would usually only do cuck stuff for a single night, but because Nim, I guess she really wanted like somebody who was like Middle Eastern and had like a 15-inch dick or whatever, because it's like 4 times bigger than mine, I had to do it for 4 nights. So they would lock me in the corner of the room and I would be getting cucked over and over.
Now the real question is Rent-A-Girlfriend the worst romance series to ever exist? No, absolutely not, and if I'm being completely honest, it's not even the worst romance anime I've ever seen. That being said, it definitely is up there among the ones that have gotten really popular within the community, and it has remained the reigning king of dog shit slice of life rom-coms that I've ever reviewed. That is, until the year of 2023, when a challenger finally stepped up to take its place on the throne of garbage, and that anime is The Dangers in My Heart. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take a good long look at this cover image and really soak in the contents to get a good idea on what we're about to get ourselves into. Right off the bat, you can see the two main characters sitting in their respective spots that showcase hints of their basic personalities. The guy, whose perspective is obviously the one the story is being told from, is situated closer to the camera than the other person. Shrouded in shadows, he looks intently to the piece of literature within his hands, his consciousness deeply immersed within the words on the paper. His stance gives him the air of seriousness and sophistication, with absolutely zero concern with the world around him. Meanwhile, the other occupant is basking under the sunlight coming from the window, symbolizing her contrast from the boy, whose brooding form— what the fuck am I doing right now? What am I, your high school English teacher? Pretentious, broody loser faggot and his female love interest who's obviously out of his league. There you go. If it wasn't obvious enough to you already, I didn't care much for this show for various different reasons, such as the main character, the boring plot, the main character, the stale-ass romance. Did I mention the main character? Because I really need you to know my raw, honest opinion on the protagonist of this character-driven show. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. In order to properly illustrate why I dislike this show enough to consider it as a competitor with Rent-A-Girlfriend of all things, then we're going to have to go through a couple of key aspects that really encompasses this string of garbage together. Starting with—
Fascinated by the macabre, Kiyotaro fantasizes about acting on his twisted thoughts to the detriment of his classmates. His heart was dark until an encounter with Anna lit a spark within it, in a classic tale of boy meets girl.
Nice description, Amazon. I'm gonna start by giving this series just a small, teensy bit of credit, since the first episode does a really good job of setting up the tone and telling you exactly what you can expect throughout the rest of the story. The main protagonist, Kiyotaro, is seen reading a book in his classroom while the rest of his schoolmates are actually socializing with each other. One guy accidentally bumps into him and he has a whole ass fantasy in his head about cutting this dude up with a pair of box cutters. To put it in the nicest way possible, Kiyotaro is an autistic, socially inept faggot who is completely incapable of acting like a normal person, or as he described it,
I'm messed up in the head. No one at this junior high realizes how the peaceful equilibrium of daily life teeters on the edge.
According to him, he has an insatiable desire of wanting to kill every single one of his classmates. However, the one he especially wants to murder is the most popular girl in his class, Anna Yamada. Oh my god, we got Japanese school shooter anime before GTA 6.
How does anyone find that funny?
One day during lunch, Kiyotaro is heading out to his usual spot in the library when all of a sudden he runs into Yamada, who was already in there. As you can probably already guess, the main meat of the retard-ass plot of this show is basically Kiyotaro continuously monologuing about how much he wants to kill Yamada, only to realize that the so-called perfect girl of the school isn't as elegant and proper as he previously expected. In fact, she's actually an extremely eccentric, oblivious, and sometimes downright clueless idiot who has about as much social aptitude as a child at times. Alright, so as I'm telling you all this, you might be thinking, wait a second, a complete fucking loser who's at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy catching the attention of his beautiful classmate who realistically shouldn't even know he exists? I've heard this plot before, several several times in fact. Here comes Pseudo with his typical elitist monkey mindset of hating anything that's not a battle shonen with flashy animation. You know buddy, just because you don't like slice of life anime doesn't mean it's inherently a bad genre. Just because your impatient zoomer brain doesn't have the capacity to sit through a slow burn doesn't mean you should make fun of people who do. Sure, the plot may not be completely original, but so very few pieces of entertainment ever are 100% fresh and new these days. Heck, you're just an unfunny ripoff of every other anime review channel out there. And you know what? You are absolutely right, strawman representation of my viewers. At its absolute base level, there's nothing extraordinarily offensive about the premise of The Dangers in My Heart. It's not high art by any stretch of the imagination, but nobody goes into these types of shows expecting it to be. More often than not, they're just putting it on because they just wanted a trashy romance show to watch after a long day of work, and that's completely fine. Sure, it's definitely on the otaku pandering side of things, but there have been plenty of shows like that, and I never made a huge fuss about it. So why? Why exactly have I decided to pick on this show in particular, to the point where I compared it to a trash fire like Rent-a-Girlfriend of all things? Well, my dear viewer, like almost every piece of entertainment, it's not much the idea itself that's the problem, but more so the execution. In terms of plot structure and progression, The Dangers in My Heart runs into pretty much the exact same problem as Rent-a-Girlfriend in that it's repetitive as absolute fuck. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying there is something inherently wrong with formulaic storytelling, since that would suggest a wide variety of media are just terrible, which I don't agree with at all. That being said, a formula is supposed to give you a basic skeleton to work off for your story, not something to constantly fall back on when you clearly don't know what else to do with the runtime. This is going to sound weird, but take shows like Phineas and Ferb, for example, which follows a preset structure for each episode. Phineas and Ferb have an idea, they build said idea, and their sister Candace will try to tattle on them, but their invention will always disappear before their mom can see it, every single time. The entertainment value doesn't come from what is going to happen in the story, but more so on how the story is going to play out. And the show really does get creative with how they retell what is essentially the same storyline, but with different context for 4 whole seasons. But that being said, this was an actual good series that was written by competent people who clearly knew what they were doing. On the other hand, here's how a typical Dangers in My Heart storyline goes. Kyotaro tries to carry out an everyday activity, Yamada gets inserted into the scenario completely by pure coincidence, she does something incredibly stupid or cringy because she's retarded, and then Kyotaro does something even more stupid so that she doesn't get embarrassed. Rinse and fucking repeat for 12 goddamn episodes. Actually, wait. There's fucking more. Now again, just a preface, if it was literally just that, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It would have just been a regular, boring, run-off-the-mill romance anime that wouldn't even be worth mentioning. You see, the thing that makes this stand out is just how they continue to replay this exact same string of plot threads over and over again, and somehow manage to achieve higher levels of cringe every single time. This show is excruciatingly boring at best and agonizingly painful at worst. Take this scene from the first half of episode 1 as an example of what I mean by this. So for context, when Kyotaro ran into Yamada in the library, he actually saw her working on a poster for an upcoming group presentation. The next day, he eavesdrops on the conversation among her group and overhears that one of Yamada's friends had redone the entire poster she made the other day, because apparently it was a complete mess, which triggers his white knight instincts. Aside from the fact that it was none of his fucking business and that he was being a nosy creep by listening into their discussion, I fail to see how Yamada's friend was in the wrong here. I mean, they try to paint her as some kind of jealous skank who deliberately did this to try and look good or something, but we were shown pretty early on that Yamada isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, so the idea that she made an incoherent mess of a poster ain't exactly hard to believe. Plus, literally anybody who's ever done a group assignment, be it in high school or college, will know the feeling of having to redo slides for a presentation because one of your groupmates is an incompetent fuck. Thanks, Steve. It's an infuriatingly long and tedious process that literally nobody enjoys doing, so the idea that this random side chick went through all that hassle just to earn a few brownie points is extremely hard to believe. It kinda just shows just how socially inept the author and anyone who's eating this shit up is. But as if that wasn't eye-rollingly stupid enough, when it comes time to actually do the presentation, Kyotaro notices that Yamada's all down in the fucking dumps apparently because her poster wasn't used for the assignment. Then all of a sudden a plane started passing by outside, which prompted everyone to turn their attention towards the window. Kyotaro starts panicking because, oh no, everyone's going to see Yamada crying, which might embarrass her. So, in order to prevent that from happening, he steps up and starts giving the best presentation of his life. Bitch, what the actual fuck is wrong with you? it comes to writing slice of life shows, especially those that fall into the genre of romance, having likable characters is an incredibly vital thing to get down. I have always had the opinion that writing good characters is just a teensy bit more important than the plot itself, and I think that mindset is even more applicable in this scenario because realistically, it's usually the only thing that's going to make your story entertaining in any sort of way. I know that sounds like a hot take, but really take a second to think about what I just said. Almost every single one of these romance shows follows a certain structure in regards to the plot. Not all of them, but a good majority do. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy. They either both have an established interest in each other, or it's a one-sided admiration from either party. They're then constantly forced into situations where they have to interact with each other and ultimately develop feelings as they slowly learn about each other's respective situations. There is almost nothing unique left you can do with romance stories that hasn't already been tried, and frankly, those who watch this genre don't expect originality anyway. With that being said, I personally would say that The Dangers in My Heart falls into a category I like to call the cheeky waifu anime, not to be mistaken with the other popular genre that's come up before on the channel known as pretentious waifu anime, which is something I've actually brought up before, but it's basically just a series that solely revolves around the girl on the front cover. Other shows that can be classified under this umbrella are Bunny Girl Senpai, Haruhi Suzumiya, and Your Lie in April, where every single thing that happens in the story will always ultimately go back to the super peppy kawaii girl with a super complex personality, and the connection will always 90% of the time be about how oh so awesome she is, and I hate it. Now you may be wondering, Pseudo, what exactly is a cheeky waifu anime? And I'm honestly shocked you'd even ask. If you've been paying any amount of attention to the slice of life genre, then you've definitely seen at least one show that falls into this category. You know, high school setting, absolute fucking loser protagonist somehow miraculously getting the attention of the most popular girl in class, who just so happens to be a flirty, smug, slightly sadistic cunt who, despite acting like a complete whore, is actually a secretly pure virgin who's ignorant to romance. Uzaki, Nagatoro, Dress Up Darling, you know the drill, and this show is pretty much just a carbon copy of those shows, but somehow worse. And it's mainly because of this little shit right here. Look, I already mentioned that the majority of people who watch romance aren't tuning in for peak storytelling in any capacity. The main appeal is without a shadow of a doubt the characters, because how can you expect the audience to root for the love story if the characters aren't even likable? That was one of the biggest problems with Rent-a-Girlfriend, as every single person in that dumpster fire was dog shit in their own way. But that's where the differences comes into play. The Rent-a-Girlfriend cast completely tore down and set my mental stability on fire because every single one of the characters were terrible. It was a collective effort in this scenario, but for The Dangers in My Heart, Kyotaro has single-handedly managed to sour the entire fucking series for me due to the simple fact that this fucking midget is one of the most infuriatingly cringy protagonists that I have ever seen in my life, and I already know just saying that is going to piss off a certain demographic of people. Listen, I'll admit, I am not the biggest fan of loser protagonists, mainly because I don't find it very entertaining to see a sniveling man-child whine and cry for 12 episodes straight until he gets some pity pussy. Well, however, although I have an obvious bias, I can still concede that there's definitely a way to utilize a loser protagonist without making him an insufferable piece of shit. In fact, 2 out of 3 of the shows I mentioned earlier actually managed to accomplish this, and the show in particular that I'm going to use as a basis for my argument is none other than My Dress Up Darling. The characters for this series are Gojo, a shy social recluse with a passion for crafting traditionalistic dolls, and Marin, a popular social butterfly who's also a giant otaku. This possible relationship dynamic works because of one vital reason. Both Gojo and Marin are likable as people. While Marin is very obviously designed to pretty much be the dream girl of every smelly weeb watching this, Gojo himself is a decent protagonist in his own right. Sure, he might be socially awkward and way too shy, but he's also an extremely sweet and hardworking guy with a clear ambition that he's actively striving towards, which is more than I can say for most male romance MCs. As for Shinichi from Uzaki, he harbors a few of the same negative qualities that Gojo has, the main one being that he's not what you would call a social butterfly. In fact, he's quite the opposite, being reclusive, grumpy, antisocial, and lacking any productive hobbies besides playing video games during his spare time. However, he also has a job, is mature, polite, and independent. Not to mention, he's jacked as fuck. Just like Gojo, he may not be perfect, but both of these guys have plenty of positive traits and qualities that balance out their faults, making it much more believable when attractive girls like Marin and Uzaki develop feelings for them. On the other hand, if we go back to The Dangers in My Heart, I struggle to find anything good to say about Kyotaro. He's unsociable, clumsy, not particularly smart, and extremely creepy. I don't think I even have to comment about his looks, as not only is he incredibly short, but he clearly doesn't put much effort into taking care of his appearance. Meanwhile, Yamada may be pretty stupid, but she's also popular, has some level of social skills, and is considered very attractive. And not to be a part-time model model. Oh, but pseudo. The point of the show is seeing Kyotaro's development. He learns and grows a lot throughout the show. I am completely aware of that, and yeah, character development is all fine and dandy. But the problem is, Yamada develops feelings for him before he starts improving himself. Sure, he might have helped her out a few times, but newsflash, acting like a decent human being isn't enough to make a girl fall in love with you. It could have been interesting to see them develop a friendship. Yamada starts treating him nicer, and he mistakes that kindness for feelings, only for her to reject him. After that, he could have had a whole self-improvement arc where he starts working out, studying, and taking showers more often, but instead, Yamada falls in love with Kyotaro while he's still a horny little creep who jerked off to pictures of her. Even by wish fulfillment standards, this is pretty ridiculous. At least Kazuya was treated like the incel that he is for the most part. Say what you want about Shizuru as a character, but she wasn't falling at his feet just because he had short instances where he wasn't acting like a retard. Imagine if in Re:Zero, Subaru goes from an entitled, arrogant incel to the humble, caring, and thoughtful protagonist that he ends up becoming without having to go through all the death, humiliation, and reality checks in between. Character development is suddenly much less meaningful since there's no proper reason for it, right? That is exactly the issue with Kyotaro. He gets everything without having to work for it, and he changes with no proper reason. God, I hate this show for making me the phrase rent-a-girlfriend.
Now let me say I'm the biggest hater. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you sneak this.
So in conclusion, is Dangers in My Heart the worst romance anime I've ever seen? No, of course not. If you legitimately believe this is the worst thing this genre has to offer, then you clearly haven't gone off the deep end enough. Don't get me wrong, it's still an incredibly painful experience to sit through, but there's the fact that I'm clearly not the target audience for this kind of show. As for how it compares to Rent-a-Girlfriend, I'd say it's slightly better purely because of the fact that Kyotaro and Yamada are significantly younger, so their stupid antiques are a bit more forgivable, but that's about it. Overall, it's just another bad slice of life rom-com about stupid teenagers, made for stupid teenagers, and probably written by a fat man child. Wait, the creator's a woman? Is she single?